The Crystal Hall was silent when the vote ended. Ambassador Helen Carter watched the numbers appear on the glowing screen above her head and felt her heart sink into her stomach. Every species in the galaxy had voted, and the result was clear. Humanity was being thrown out of the Galactic Council. She gripped the edge of her podium and tried to keep her face calm, even though she wanted to scream at all of them. The war had ended 30 years ago, but these aliens still remembered. They remembered how humans fought and how humans won, and it scared them more than they wanted to admit. High Arbiter Meln stood at the center of the chamber, with his 4 yellow eyes blinking one after another. He raised his long arm and spoke in that clicking language that the translators turned into cold words. He said that humanity was officially expelled from the Council. He said all human ships had to leave Council space within 30 days. He said all trade deals were cancelled, and all diplomatic channels were closed. Helen wanted to argue, but she looked at their faces and saw the truth. They were not punishing humanity for crimes. They were afraid of what humans might become if they were allowed to stay. Back on Earth, in the underground command center beneath Geneva, the message arrived. Admiral Peter Hayes sat at the head of the long table and watched Helen's face on the screen. She looked tired and defeated. She told them what happened and said they had 1 month to get everyone out of Council space. She also said something else that made Peter's blood run cold. Several alien species were already talking about quarantine measures. They wanted to trap humanity in their home systems and make sure humans could never threaten them again. The other military leaders sat around the table in shocked silence. General Claire Morrison clenched her fists. Admiral Richard Cole stared at the wall. Intelligence Director Martin Webb tapped his fingers on the table and looked thoughtful. Peter was 62 years old and had fought in the sovereignty wars against the Krelm. He knew this day was coming. He had been preparing for it. Peter cleared his throat and everyone looked at him. He said they needed to talk about Operation Exodus. The room got even quieter. Claire leaned forward and asked if he was serious. Peter nodded and said he was completely serious. Martin Webb opened a file on his tablet and projected it onto the wall screen. It showed star maps of regions far beyond Council space. Before the wars, human exploration ships had mapped thousands of systems that the Council considered too remote or too poor in resources. But Martin's intelligence teams had found something amazing hidden in those maps. The Cascade Nebula appeared on the screen. It was a massive cloud of purple and blue gas that scrambled long-range sensors. Inside that nebula were 12 planets that could support human life. The asteroid belts were full of rare metals and elements that would make any engineer weep with joy. Best of all, the Council had no idea any of it existed because their sensors could not see through the nebula's interference. Richard Cole brought up more data. He said advanced teams were already there setting up basic infrastructure. The colony ships that Earth had been building and calling inter-system transports could be modified for the long journey. But they were talking about moving millions of people across hundreds of light years into unknown space. It was the biggest gamble in human history. Peter said they were not just moving millions. Everyone who wanted to come would come. But they had to be smart about it. The Council expected humanity to retreat to Earth and Mars and slowly fade away. Instead, humanity was going to disappear completely. They would let the Council think they won. Meanwhile, humans would be building something new in the darkness, where no one could see them. Over the next 28 days, the greatest migration humanity had ever attempted began. Massive colony ships left Earth and Mars, and Europa, and all the other human settlements. They were disguised as refugee transports heading for the quarantine zones. The Council watched with their sensors and felt satisfied. Humanity was retreating, just as they hoped. But those ships did not go to the quarantine zones. As soon as they were out of sensor range, they changed course. They jumped toward the edge of explored space and then vanished into the purple clouds of the Cascade Nebula. Helen Carter was on one of the last ships to leave. She stood at the observation window and watched Earth get smaller behind them. She had spent her whole career trying to make peace between humans and aliens. She had believed that understanding and cooperation could overcome fear. Now, she knew the truth. The galaxy did not want to understand humanity. They wanted humanity to disappear. The ship's captain came to stand beside her. His name was Peter's son, Daniel Hayes, and he was young, but capable. He asked Helen if she thought they were doing the right thing. Helen watched Earth vanish into the black and said she did not know. But she knew that staying would mean slow death. At least out in the nebula, they would have a chance to build something new, something that belonged only to humanity. The colony ships entered the nebula one by one. The purple clouds closed around them like a curtain, and the rest of the galaxy lost track of them completely. Inside the nebula, the ships followed coordinates that the advance teams had sent. They traveled for 3 more weeks before they finally saw it. A blue and green world hanging in space like a jewel. The first colony ship to arrive transmitted a message back to the fleet. They called the planet New Harmony. Back in Council space, High Arbiter Meln reviewed the final reports. All human vessels had left. All human colonies in Council territory had been evacuated. The human problem was solved. The other Council members congratulated each other on handling the situation peacefully. No one had to fire a shot. Humanity had simply accepted their fate and left. Meln looked at the star charts showing the quarantine zones where humanity was supposed to be settling. Everything looked normal. He felt a small, nagging doubt in the back of his mind but pushed it away. Humans were resourceful, but they were also isolated now. Without access to Council technology and trade, they would struggle just to survive. In a few generations, they would be no threat to anyone. He had no idea that humanity had just been given exactly what they needed: time and space to grow without interference. The Council had tried to clip humanity's wings. Instead, they had freed them to fly higher than anyone imagined possible. The biggest mistake was already made, and there was no going back. 15 years passed since the ships entered the nebula. Captain Lisa Grant stood on the bridge of the Endeavour and looked out at the construction yards floating above New Harmony. Dozens of massive platforms hung in orbit, and each one was building warships. Not the small patrol boats that humanity used to make. These were real warships, built with new technology and new ideas. She counted the vessels under construction and felt pride mixed with worry. Commander Jake Palmer stood beside her, reading numbers from his tablet. He said they had 47 heavy cruisers operational. 92 destroyers were ready for service. 21 dreadnoughts were finishing their final tests. The forge stations were actually ahead of schedule. Lisa shook her head in amazement. When the colony ships first arrived at New Harmony, everyone thought it would take decades just to build basic infrastructure. Instead, the 12 worlds of the Cascade Nebula had been turned into an industrial powerhouse in just 15 years. Automated mining stations stripped asteroids of every useful material. Factories worked around the clock building components. And most importantly, humanity was innovating without the Council's restrictive rules about technology sharing. Jake looked up from his tablet and said the new ships had propulsion systems that were 30% faster than anything the Council used. The shields could absorb twice as much damage. The weapons did not rely on Council-approved power cores, which meant they could be upgraded and modified freely. Lisa thought about what that meant. Humanity had innovated more in 15 years of isolation than in a century of cooperation with the Council. Down on the surface of New Harmony, a woman named Kate Miller walked through Research Complex 7. She was the director of advanced technology, and today, her team was showing her something incredible. She entered Lab 12, where Dr. Sam Torres waited for her. Sam looked like he had not slept in 3 days, but his eyes were bright with excitement. He told Kate they had finally done it. Stable quantum entanglement communication across interstellar distances. Kate felt her heart beat faster. During the Sovereignty Wars, the Council had faster-than-light communication, and humanity did not. It meant the Council could coordinate their fleets perfectly, while human ships were always one step behind. Human scientists had been trying to crack that technology for 50 years. Now Sam was saying they had their own version. Sam led Kate to a chamber where 2 identical machines sat on metal pedestals. There were no cables connecting them. No visible link of any kind. Sam typed a message into the first machine. The same message appeared instantly on the second machine, which was located in a bunker on the opposite side of the planet. No delay. No signal that could be intercepted. No way for the Council to detect it. Sam explained that they could now coordinate fleet movements across 100 light-years with perfect timing. Every ship would know exactly what every other ship was doing at the exact same moment. Kate smiled, which was rare for her. She told Sam that Admiral Hayes needed to see this immediately. Admiral Peter Hayes was now 77 years old but still working every day. He sat in his office overlooking the capital city of New Harmony, called Promise. The city had grown from a few temporary shelters to a metropolis of 2 million people. Beside Peter sat Martin Webb, who was the same age and still running intelligence operations. Martin poured them both a drink and said they had the technology now. They had the ships and the trained crews. The question was, what to do with all of it? Peter stared out the window at the towers and streets below. Every person down there had given up their old life to come here. They left behind homes and friends and familiar skies. They did it because staying in council space meant living under constant suspicion and fear. Peter said the council wanted humanity gone because they were afraid. The council assumed humans would either fade into nothing or become pirates and raiders. They never imagined humanity would become stronger. Martin said some of the younger officers wanted revenge. They wanted to take the fleet and attack council space. Show them what a mistake they made. Peter turned away from the window and said, revenge was not the answer. Humanity was not going to become conquerors. But they also could not hide forever. Eventually, someone would find the nebula. When that happened, they needed to be ready. Martin agreed and said they should finish building the entire fleet. Everything they had planned. The massive Titan-class carriers that could launch 100 fighters. The stealth frigates that could slip past enemy sensors. All of it. And every ship needed to be crewed by people who understood why they were out here. Peter raised his glass and made a toast. To the hidden fleet. May they never need to use it, but may they be ready if they must. 3 more years went by. Lisa Grant got promoted to fleet captain and received command of the Valiant. It was one of the new Titan-class carriers, and the most advanced ship humanity had ever built. But more than that, she was assigned to perimeter defense. Admiral Richard Cole, who now commanded all military operations, explained what that meant. They were creating a network of sensor stations around the entire nebula. Patrol routes that would catch anyone trying to sneak in. Lisa accepted the assignment with pride. The hidden fleet now had over 400 warships. Each one incorporated 18 years of human engineering, without any restrictions. They were faster than council ships. Their armor was tougher. Their weapons hit harder. But what really made them dangerous was the training. Every officer and crew member had grown up hearing the stories. How the council abandoned humanity after the war. How they tried to trap humans in quarantine zones. How they never gave humanity a fair chance. Those stories created a determination that bordered on obsession. Every pilot trained until they could fly their ship in their sleep. Every gunner could hit a target the size of a shuttle at 1,000 kilometers. Every engineer knew their systems so well they could repair damage in the dark. The hidden fleet was not just a collection of ships. It was the physical manifestation of humanity's refusal to be victims ever again. They trained for battles they hoped would never come. They prepared for a war they prayed they would never fight. But if that war came, they would be ready in ways the galaxy could not imagine. Kate Miller stood in her lab late one night looking at the quantum communicator. She thought about what it represented. Every piece of technology they created here was born from necessity. The Council had cut them off from galactic knowledge and trade. That should have crippled human progress. Instead, it forced humanity to think differently, to innovate in ways they never would have under Council oversight. She wondered what the Council would think if they could see what humanity had built. Would they regret their decision? Would they be afraid? Kate decided it did not matter what they thought. Humanity was done asking for permission or approval. They had built their own civilization in the darkness. And when the time came to step back into the light, they would do it on their own terms. 23 years after the exile, a small scout ship called Phoenix was running for its life. Lieutenant Commander Amy Foster gripped her console as another explosion rocked the hull. Sparks flew from damaged systems. The lights flickered. Her pilot, Lieutenant Greg Mason, threw the ship into a hard turn that made the gravity compensators scream. 3 alien fighters were chasing them and closing fast. Greg shouted that they needed to get inside the nebula. The purple clouds were visible ahead, but still too far away. The enemy fighters were called Vren, and they were new to this part of space, aggressive and always looking to expand their territory. The Phoenix had been shadowing a Vren patrol for 2 weeks, making sure they did not get too close to the nebula. But this time the Vren detected the Phoenix's scanner sweeps and attacked. Amy checked her systems and said the jump drive was damaged. They could not make a faster-than-light jump. That meant they were stuck at normal speeds, and the Vren fighters were faster. Greg looked at her and they both understood what that meant. If the Vren captured them, they would torture them for information. They would learn about the nebula and the human civilization hidden inside. Everything their people had built would be exposed. Amy ordered Greg to send the emergency signal on the encrypted channel. Then she started purging all the navigation data from the ship's computer. If the Vren boarded, they would find nothing useful. Greg pushed the engines past their safety limits, buying them a few more seconds. The nebula was so close now, but 3 more Vren fighters appeared on sensors. 6 total. The Phoenix did not stand a chance. Then space itself seemed to tear open. 12 human destroyers dropped out of quantum drive in perfect formation. They appeared between the Phoenix and the Vren fighters, like a wall of steel and fire. Amy stared at the sensor display in shock. The destroyers moved with precision that looked almost like a dance. Every ship knew exactly where every other ship would be. A voice came over the communication channel. Captain Brandon Price of the Defender said that the Phoenix should reduce speed and fall in behind them. His destroyers would handle the Vren. Amy watched as the 12 human ships engaged 6 enemy fighters. The Vren were fast and their pilots were skilled, but they had never faced anything like human tactics. The lead destroyer fired missiles that split apart into smaller submunitions. They created a kill zone that filled space with explosions. 2 Vren fighters vanished in balls of fire. The others tried to break away, but the human ships had already positioned themselves to block every escape route. The Vren pilots were good, but the human coordination was perfect. Each destroyer acted like it could read the minds of the others. 90 seconds after it started, the battle was over. 4 Vren fighters were destroyed. 2 managed to jump away, but they were badly damaged. Repair drones launched from the Defender and swarmed over the Phoenix, patching the damaged hull. Captain Price's destroyer pulled alongside, and his face appeared on Amy's screen. He welcomed them home and said they picked up the distress signal and came as fast as they could. Amy thanked him but said they had a problem. The Vren saw them. The Vren knew something was out here. Price's expression darkened. He said Command already knew about that. And yes, it was a problem. In the war room on New Harmony, Admiral Peter Hayes listened to the report. He was 85 now and officially retired, but the military still asked his opinion on important matters. Beside him sat Admiral Karen Foster, who had taken over as Supreme Commander. She was younger and sharper, but she respected Peter's experience. Karen analyzed the tactical data from the battle and said the Vren were expansionist. They had been pushing into unclaimed space for 5 years. If they reported back to the Council about finding humans, the advantage of secrecy would be lost. Director of Intelligence Sophie Grant asked if the Vren transmitted anything before the Phoenix was rescued. Sophie had taken over from Martin Webb when he finally retired. She said their communication intercepts showed no transmissions. But the Vren would notice when their patrol did not return. They would send a bigger force to investigate. Admiral Richard Cole was 83 and still refused to retire completely. He slammed his fist on the table and said they should discourage the Vren. Make this region of space somewhere the Vren did not want to be. Show them that poking around here was bad for their health. Karen said they had to be careful, though. If the Council learned about the fleet's full size, They might see humanity as a threat. All the Council species might unite against them. Peter spoke up and everyone listened. His voice was still strong despite his age. He said they had spent 2 decades preparing for this exact moment. They had options now. They could negotiate from a position of strength or they could stay hidden. But they could not do both. Eventually, they would have to choose. Sophie added another piece of information. The intelligence network had maintained contacts inside Council space. They had agents and informants who sent reports. Those reports said the Council was not as unified as it used to be. Different species were arguing over resources and territory. Some old alliances were breaking down. The Council that exiled humanity no longer existed. It had been replaced by something weaker and more divided. Peter looked at Karen and said maybe it was time. Time to remind the galaxy that humanity never really went away. Karen nodded slowly. She understood what he meant. The hidden fleet could not stay hidden forever. Better to reveal it on their terms than wait for someone else to expose them. Karen started planning. She called in her best strategists and tactical officers. They worked for 3 days straight, developing what they called Shadow Protocol. The plan was simple. When the Vren came back, humanity would not hide. They would not run. They would show just enough strength to make a point, but not so much that the Council panicked. Meanwhile, on a Vren warship called Predator, a commander named Krell read the report from the 2 fighters that escaped. His battle computer analyzed the human ships, and the results made no sense. The database said humans were exiled 23 years ago. They were cut off from Council technology and resources. They should be weak and barely surviving. But the fighters reported encountering 12 advanced warships with technology superior to anything the Vren possessed. Krell did not believe it at first. He thought the fighter pilots were making excuses for their failure. But the sensor logs did not lie. Those were human ships, and they were dangerous. Krell made a decision. He would take a full battle group to investigate. 12 warships with him in command. Whatever the humans had built out there, he would crush it and claim the territory for the Vren Empire. He sent a message to Vren High Command requesting permission. They approved immediately. The Vren were always happy to expand their territory, and humans were considered weak. It should be an easy victory. Krell smiled as he plotted the jump coordinates. He would show these humans what happened when they interfered with Vren operations. On New Harmony, Karen Foster received intelligence that a Vren battle group was forming. 12 warships heading toward the nebula. She looked at the fleet status display. Over 400 human ships ready for action. Crews trained to perfection. Technology, 20 years ahead of anything the Council had. The Vren had no idea what they were about to face. Karen gave the order to execute Shadow Protocol. Selected ships moved to predetermined positions around the nebula's edge. Sensor drones went active. Communication networks came online. The hidden fleet was about to become visible. And the galaxy was about to learn that humanity had not been idle during their exile. The Vren battle group arrived exactly where their fighters had disappeared. 12 warships led by Commander Krell aboard the Predator spread out in attack formation. Their sensors swept the area looking for anything unusual. They found debris from the destroyed fighters, but nothing else. No sign of the ships that destroyed them. Krell ordered his fleet to expand the search grid. Whatever was hiding here, he would find it and destroy it. The Vren pushed deeper into the region, unaware that tiny sensor drones were tracking their every move. In the command center on New Harmony, Admiral Karen Foster watched the enemy positions update in real time on the holographic display. The Vren ships showed up as red dots moving through the star map. Captain Brandon Price stood beside her and said the Vren were persistent. They were not going to give up and go home. Karen said they were not going to hide anymore either. She activated the fleet-wide communication channel. All ships were ordered to execute Shadow Protocol. It was time to show the Vren what happened when someone poked the hornet's nest. Across the nebula, human warships received their orders and began moving into position. On the Predator, Krell was studying sensor data when alarms started going off. His sensor officer shouted that contacts were appearing on the display. Dozens of ships emerging from the nebula in a coordinated pattern. Krell stared at the screen in disbelief. The computer identified them as human vessels. But that made no sense. Humans were exiled and isolated. They did not have the resources to build a fleet like this. The sensor officer ran diagnostics and confirmed the readings. Those were definitely human ships, and their technology signatures were far more advanced than anything humans possessed 20 years ago. Krell felt the first flicker of doubt. Maybe this was not going to be as easy as he thought. The lead human ship was a massive dreadnought called Titan. It opened a communication channel, and Admiral Karen Foster's face appeared on every Vren view screen. She spoke clearly and calmly. Commander Krell was in violation of sovereign human territory. He had one chance to withdraw peacefully. After that, humanity would consider his presence an act of war. Krell bared his teeth in the Vren expression of contempt. He told this human admiral that humans had no territory here. The Council stripped humanity of all territorial claims. Humans were refugees with no power and no authority. Karen's expression did not change. She said the Council exiled humanity. Humanity found new territory and claimed it. Now, Krell was trespassing. He could leave or be removed by force. Krell made his decision based on pride. The Vren did not retreat from anyone, especially not from weak humans. He ordered his battle group into attack formation. All weapons charged and ready. 12 Vren warships surged forward, ready to teach these humans a lesson about power. The human ships did not retreat. Instead, they shifted into a defensive sphere formation. Their shields activated at maximum strength. They simply waited. Krell gave the order to fire. The Vren unleashed everything they had. Plasma cannons, missile batteries, particle beams. Enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The weapons hit the human shields and scattered like rain hitting stone. The Vren weapons were designed to overwhelm standard Council defenses. But human shields were not standard. They were layered and reinforced with technology developed over 18 years of isolation. The Vren barrage did almost nothing. Then the humans returned fire. Point defense lasers shot Vren missiles out of space before they could hit. Railguns accelerated metal slugs to a fraction of light speed. Those slugs punched through Vren armor like it was paper. And the quantum communication systems meant every human ship knew exactly where every other ship was aiming. There were no wasted shots, no friendly fire incidents, just perfect, devastating coordination. Krell watched in horror as 2 of his ships exploded within the first minute. Their shields collapsed under the focused fire. Their hulls ruptured. Escape pods launched, but many crew did not make it out. A 3rd ship lost power and went dead in space. A 4th was cut in half by a railgun shot that hit the reactor. 7 minutes after the battle started, 6 Vren warships were crippled or destroyed. The remaining 6, including Krell's flagship, were badly damaged. Krell gave the order to retreat. His pride was gone, replaced by survival instinct. The Vren ships jumped to faster than light speed and fled. Captain Price asked Karen if they should pursue. Karen shook her head. Let them run. Let them tell the Council what they found. The message needed to spread. Humanity was not weak anymore. On the bridge of the Predator, Krell sat in his command chair, surrounded by smoke and sparking consoles. Half his crew was dead. His fleet was shattered. He had gone into battle expecting an easy victory, and instead found a nightmare. The humans had not just defended themselves. They had dominated the fight with casual efficiency. Their ships were better. Their tactics were better. Everything about them was better than it should be. Krell ordered his communication officer to send a priority message to the Council. Humanity had not withered in exile. They had been preparing and building. They were more dangerous now than they had ever been. The Council needed to know what was coming. 3 weeks later, the Galactic Council gathered in emergency session. High Arbiter Meln was older now, with gray in his scales. He read the Vren report with growing alarm. The chamber erupted in chaos as representatives from 800 species all tried to talk at once. The Tellurian representative said the report could not be accurate. Humanity was isolated with no access to advanced materials or technology. A Hevian delegate named Selvik said the Vren did not lie about military defeats. If they reported being outmatched, then they were outmatched. The Krelln representative hissed with anger. The Krelln had fought humans in the sovereignty wars and lost. He said, they should have destroyed humanity when they had the chance. Now the humans had built a fleet in secret and would want revenge. The chamber filled with arguing voices. Some species demanded immediate military action. Others urged caution, remembering how dangerous humans could be in war. Some wanted to open negotiations. Others wanted to establish a blockade. Nobody could agree on anything. High Arbiter Meln called for silence. His voice boomed through the chamber until everyone stopped talking. He said they needed more information before making decisions. They would send a diplomatic envoy to make contact with humanity. The envoy would offer to negotiate. But at the same time, the Council fleet would be readied. If humanity proved to be a threat, they had to be prepared to contain them. In the back of the chamber, a representative from the Keldari watched quietly. The Keldari were a small species that had stayed neutral during humanity's exile. They had also secretly maintained trade with human colonies, finding them to be honorable partners. The Keldari representative smiled to himself. The Council was about to learn what he already knew. Humanity could not be contained. They could only be respected or fought. And fighting them was a very bad idea. The decision was made. A diplomatic ship would be sent to human space. Ambassador Telvin would lead the mission. He was Hevian and had a reputation for fairness. If anyone could negotiate with humanity, it would be him. But behind the diplomacy, the Council began moving warships into position. Just in case. On New Harmony, Karen Foster received the intelligence reports. A Council diplomatic vessel was coming. She called a meeting with the civilian government. President Nathan Brooks and Prime Minister Laura Bennett joined her. They had to decide how to respond. This was the moment they had been preparing for. The galaxy was reaching out. Humanity had to decide whether to extend a hand or make a fist. Nathan said they should negotiate. Show the Council that humanity wanted peace. Laura agreed, but added that they had to negotiate from strength. No more begging for acceptance. No more accepting whatever terms the Council offered. This time, humanity would dictate the terms. Karen nodded. The hidden fleet had given them something precious. The power to choose their own destiny. Now they just had to use it wisely. The Council diplomatic ship Harmony dropped out of quantum space at the coordinates humanity provided. Admiral Lisa Grant watched its approach from the bridge of the Valiant. The diplomatic vessel was alone, with no military escort. Commander Jake Palmer checked the sensors and confirmed it. Either the Council was serious about negotiating, or they were incredibly foolish. Lisa decided to assume they were serious. She cleared the ship for approach to New Harmony, but kept the defense fleet at ready status. On the planet below, Admiral Karen Foster waited in the newly built diplomatic hall. The building had been constructed in just 6 months, specifically for this meeting. Beside Karen stood President Nathan Brooks, who had been elected to lead the hidden civilization. Prime Minister Laura Bennett was there as well, coordinating the 12 colony worlds. Nathan asked Karen quietly if she was nervous. Karen admitted she was terrified. They were about to find out if 23 years of preparation were enough. The Council delegation arrived in a shuttle. Ambassador Telvin led them. He was Hevian and had a reputation for being fair-minded. He had actually opposed humanity's exile decades ago, though his voice was outvoted. Telvin stepped into the hall and stopped. He looked surprised by what he saw. The building was beautiful with architecture that blended human style with practical efficiency. Through the windows he could see a thriving city of millions. Orbital construction platforms were visible in the daytime sky. Telvin said quietly that humanity had built more than a refugee camp. President Brooks corrected him politely. They had built a civilization. He invited Telvin to sit. They had much to discuss. The negotiations began with Telvin presenting the Council's position. They were concerned about the military fleet humanity had built. They wanted assurances that humans did not plan to attack Council space. In exchange, they were willing to discuss limited trade agreements. Maybe eventually they could talk about restoring diplomatic relations. Nathan listened patiently. When Telvin finished, Nathan smiled. He said with respect that Telvin was negotiating from the wrong position. The ambassador seemed to think humanity needed the Council's approval. Telvin looked confused. He pointed out that humanity was a single civilization, while the Council represented 800 species across 10,000 worlds. Prime Minister Laura spoke up. She said the Council was the one that exiled humanity when humans needed allies most. The Council tried to quarantine them and hoped they would fade away. Humanity did not ask to be cast out, but once they were, they thrived without Council help or interference. Karen stood and activated a holographic display. It showed the full extent of the hidden fleet. 427 warships, ranging from small scouts to massive carriers. It showed the 12 colony worlds with their combined industrial capacity. It showed the technology gap that now existed between human and Council capabilities. Karen explained that humanity spent 23 years innovating. Their ships were faster, their weapons were more powerful, their coordination was superior. Not because they wanted war, but because they refused to be victims again. Telvin stared at the display, finally understanding the magnitude of what humanity accomplished. He asked what humanity wanted. Nathan said simply that they wanted recognition. Humanity claimed this region of space as sovereign territory. They wanted the exile formally ended. They wanted their status as an independent power acknowledged. In exchange, humanity was willing to establish trade relationships and defensive pacts with interested Council members. Telvin protested that the Council would never agree. Humanity was asking to be treated as equals. Laura said quietly that they were not asking. They were informing the Council of reality. The Council could acknowledge it peacefully, or humanity would be forced to demonstrate their strength. But one way or another, humanity was done being afraid. Telvin returned to the Harmony, knowing his report would shake the Council to its foundation. As his ship departed, Admiral Lisa Grant sent an encrypted message to all fleet commanders. Maintain alert status. This was not over. 3 months later, the Council's response arrived. High Arbiter Meln, pressured by aggressive species that feared human power, authorized what he called a deterrent fleet. 200 Council warships were ordered to enter human space and enforce compliance with Council authority. It was meant to intimidate humanity into accepting whatever terms the Council offered. The massive fleet jumped to the edge of the Cascade Nebula. Admiral Karen Foster stood in the command center, watching the red icons appear on the holographic display. 200 warships, more than had ever been assembled in one place outside of the Sovereignty Wars. The senior staff waited for her orders. Karen looked at the display and felt calm. She said the Council thought they could intimidate humanity. They were about to learn otherwise. She ordered all ships to execute Revelation Protocol. From hidden positions throughout the nebula, the entire human fleet emerged. Not just the ships they had shown Ambassador Telvin. Every single vessel built over 23 years. 400 warships moved in perfect coordination. Their quantum communication systems allowed them to act as one unified force. But there was more. The Keldari, who had traded with humans for years, appeared with 80 ships of their own. The Sauron, who had opposed humanity's exile from the beginning, added 60 vessels. The Council force found itself facing 540 warships. They were outnumbered and badly outgunned. On the Council flagship, Battle Coordinator Shen stared at the display in horror. She asked her tactical officer how this was possible. How did humans build so much? The officer gave her the answer. Humanity never stopped. While the Council congratulated themselves on solving the human problem, humans were working and building and preparing. The Council gave them every reason to never trust again. The two fleets faced each other across empty space. No one fired. The standoff lasted 6 hours. Human ships held their positions with perfect discipline. Council ships waited for orders that did not come. Every council commander knew that starting a battle here would result in devastating losses, maybe even defeat. Finally, High Arbiter Meln appeared on all communication channels. His voice was carefully neutral. He said that perhaps the council had acted hastily in their previous decisions. Perhaps a diplomatic solution could be reached after all. From the bridge of the valiant Admiral Lisa Grant opened a channel. She said the council had their chance for diplomacy. They chose threats instead. Now humanity would present terms, and those terms were not negotiable. The treaty negotiations took 3 months. They were tense and difficult. Some council species refused to participate. Others saw the opportunity for what it was. The Keldari and Soren became humanity's strongest advocates. Gradually, more species came around. In the end, the Galactic Council formally recognized the Cascade Confederation as an independent political entity. Humanity received sovereign control over the nebula and surrounding systems. Trade agreements were established with willing species. Most importantly, humanity gained a permanent seat on the Council with full veto power. No decision could be made without human approval. The species that exiled humanity now had to treat them as equals. Admiral Peter Hayes watched the final treaty signing from his retirement home on New Harmony. He was 92 years old. Beside him, Martin Webb, equally aged, poured them both a drink. Martin said, "They did it. They survived." Peter replied that they did more than survive. They proved that humanity could not be destroyed by exile. You could only make humans stronger by trying to break them. On the bridge of the valiant Admiral Lisa Grant looked out at the fleet she commanded. She thought about all the people who sacrificed to make this moment possible. The engineers who worked endless hours in the construction yards. The colonists who built cities from nothing on 12 new worlds. The soldiers who trained for a war they hoped would never happen. All of them contributed to this victory. Commander Jake Palmer stepped beside her. He said they received new orders from command. The Valiant was being reassigned to diplomatic escort duty. Humanity was now the one showing council delegations around. Lisa smiled at the irony. Times really did change. She ordered the helm to set course for the first trade summit. It was time to show the galaxy what humanity had become. The Valiant turned toward its new mission. The hidden fleet dispersed to their stations, no longer hidden but standing as guardians of a civilization that refused to die. In the years that followed, the Cascade Confederation became a center of innovation and trade. Species that once feared humanity learned to respect them. Those who remembered the exile learned an important lesson. Never underestimate what humans can accomplish when you give them a reason to prove you wrong. Humanity had been forgotten and exiled. They forged a hidden fleet that rivaled the Galactic Council itself. And when they returned to the galaxy, they returned not as beggars, but as equals. The Council tried to end humanity's story. Instead, they just wrote the first chapter of something greater.